Welcome to the Christ Up podcast, where we seek to help young people grow in their faith and build a relationship with God outside of the rigidity of religion. My name is Thulee.
And my name is Lethu.
And we are your hosts.
On today's episode, we will be discussing what we have titled Growing Pains, more specifically ego and pride. We will be doing a series of these, the growing pains, and this is the first in the series. The idea is to discuss the trials and tribulations we are faced with as young adults and how these play out with regards to our faith. We will also explore how we can use our faith to combat these growing pains.
The term growing pains is used as a metaphor to describe the pains and the problems that we face as we journey through life.
Okay, now ego, as Sadhguru describes it, is a caricature that you as a human being support. In other words, it is a sense of self or self-importance. Another definition which drives the point home is that ego is your sense of self contrasted with another or with the world. In essence, it is what you perceive your identity to be and what it is influenced by.
Pride, on the other hand, is a feeling of deep pleasure derived from one's achievements or qualities or possessions widely admired. Another definition for pride is the consciousness of one's own dignity.
So it is important to note that while they are closely related, they are different.
Now that we have all the definitions out the way, let's discuss why ego and pride are a problem and how to best combat them.
What makes ego problematic is the fact that it is rooted in insecurity, which translates into various behaviors as a result. Ego and or pride, if gone unchecked, can actually be detrimental to relationships.
Geez, like you cannot believe. For starters, when you let your ego get the better of you, you miss being empathetic. You don't listen, you don't relate well to others, so you're consumed with yourself. In a lot of situations, being egotistical means that you're impatient, you're overly sensitive, you're bitter, you magnify the faults of others, and you're unteachable. The list goes on. The point is that you're so far gone that humility evades you.
True. I think it's also damaging because when you're self-absorbed and your ego reigns, that means you lack self-awareness.
Yep, which is so important. It is so vital that you need to check yourself, or as the slang term in South Africa goes, self-love. So self-love is important.
So let's explore how we can combat ego, or at the very least, just be aware of it.
Sure. Well, the opposite of ego is humility, but that's not always easy to come by. So maybe the question is, how does one foster humility on a day-to-day so as not to let your ego take control? Another thing to consider is, how is ego rooted in insecurity? So again, ask yourself, how can you overcome your insecurities? Let's look to the Bible for some lessons on this. While the Bible doesn't actually contain the word ego, concepts and principles in relation to ego do appear. Ego, in a nutshell, is described in the Bible as the preoccupation of self. Pride and arrogance result in the ego, and we know this because that is the very thing that turned Lucifer, who was an angel, into Satan. The Bible tells us that God opposes the proud, but that he gives grace to the humble. And in Proverbs, we are taught that pride goes before destruction. I'll read this from the Bible so that you can actually get an understanding what it is I mean. So in Proverbs 16:18, it reads as follows: Pride goes before destruction. A haughty spirit goes before the fall. And that is in the NIV. An inflated ego, and what that represents, goes against our calling as Christians, which is to humble ourselves and to depend solely on God to be of service to others.
A humble heart has no room for pride or ego, as it recognizes that all we have and all that we are comes from God.
Absolutely. And we cannot attribute to ourselves the glory that only God is due.
Okay, so here are 5 tips to combat ego. First of all, check yourself and be aware of it. Secondly, be a receptive student of life. Be open to correction. Thirdly, you can refrain from seeking external validation, for example, from social media, and don't let that fuel your ego. Fourth, you can let go of control. And finally, realize who you are and the journey that has led you to where you are.
Jesus is the perfect model for humility. So let's look to him and the way that he lived, because he led with love and respect and a deep sense of humility. And I think that's what we all need to get through this life. So now we're just going to discuss a few anecdotes, just examples from our lives about how it is ego shows up and how it is you can recognize it so that you are able to check yourself before you wreck yourself. So let's discuss that. So what would be one example, Lethu, do you think, of the ego getting the better of you?
I think, well, since we're living in the times that we're living in, I'll make an example of social media. So for example, if I had to post a picture of myself on Instagram or tweet something, and all I focus on is the amount of likes and retweets that I get, or the one place that my validation comes from is the amount of likes and retweets that I get, and that's my primary focus, I think that would be the ego taking control. Because yes, social media is great and we just post things for the sake of posting things, but if you only find your value in the amount of likes and the amount of retweets and the amount of external validation that you get, that is problematic, and that is you letting ego take control.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it is so important. Like, maybe that can actually be an exercise that you do, is post something and then just let it be. Just post it. Don't go back every hour, because I think people do that obsessively.
Yeah.
But yeah, post something. Don't go back every hour trying to see how many likes you've gotten. Just post it for the sake of posting it. Like, I think, well, because for me, social media is my job. I don't post that much on my own personal Instagram. I use Twitter more just because also for research purposes, it just makes more sense for me. But yeah, social media is such a huge part of my job. And I think in the beginning, before I started to kind of master it, I used to post things, and even like for clients and things, I'd post stuff and obsess over the likes. I'm so glad, in some ways, I'm glad that the algorithm is changing and it isn't really about the likes, but really about the value that you're adding, right? So maybe focus on that. If you're a small business and you get so hung up, or even just, you know, posting for your personal brand or whatever, because I know that's a huge thing for people too. But yeah, outside of it just being about how many likes you're getting, just focus on the value that you're, you know, bringing to the space. Again, whatever that might look like, be it for your small business or be it for, you know, your personal brand. But try to do this for yourself. Post something and just let it be. Don't focus on the likes. Don't let that be the thing that validates what it is. You know, you're getting your value out of. Or even just tweeting something, putting something on any other social media platforms, TikTok or whatever. Don't let the likes define what it is you mean.
And don't do it primarily for the likes and the retweets or whatever. Just do it for the sake of doing it. Like, post a picture because you like the picture and you just want to put it out there. But I think don't don't have your main motivation be what you can get out of it from other people.
Yeah. And I think another example, I'll give one that's more personal to me, because this is something I struggle with. But I think a lot of the time when you're being corrected, I mean, obviously that also depends how that correction comes across. But I find myself getting so defensive, because it's not because I don't like to be corrected. It's because of how it is I receive it a lot of the time, and I feel like I'm being attacked. Now, I'll tell you why it is I feel like I'm being attacked a lot of the times. I'm a small person. I'm really short. And sometimes because of the way that I, you know, relate with other people, a lot of the time when I'm speaking to people, and this is obviously, I'm relating this to the age before COVID, but like a lot of the time I'd find that I'm looking up to a lot of the people that I'm speaking to, and they're looking down on me. And a lot of the time when people speak to you, well, in that sort of dynamic, a lot of the time it came across to me that they were shouting at me. This is like their voices are projected in a way, you know? So a lot of the time I would feel like I'm being attacked and I'd have to defend myself. And a lot of the time, even if you just are correcting me, my thinking is that you're attacking me. You're not correcting me in a way that I felt like I had the space to just listen to that person that's correcting me, I would feel attacked. And my go-to has been just to be defensive, and I hate that, and I'm working on it. And I've also come to the realization that it's because I've let my ego take control, where I feel like a person is attacking me, and that shouldn't be my first way of thinking, right? Like that shouldn't be my train of thought. My train of thought should be just to assess the situation for what it is. And I think even as a human being giving feedback at any time, can we all just be conscious and mindful of the fact that when you are giving feedback, it need not be personal. You really need to focus on what it is you're giving feedback on. So if in a work situation, for example, if you're giving feedback on maybe the work that somebody has produced and it's not satisfactory work, focus on the work. Let that drive the way that you give your feedback, and maybe write it down. Write it down and practice it a few times, so that the way that you do deliver it, at the point that you do deliver it, it doesn't come across as it being a personal attack. Because a lot of the time that's how I felt I received feedback, and that is why I was defensive. But again, I've now noted that there's obviously an ego at play there, so I need to check myself that I don't think that it is about me that the person is, saying whatever it is that they're saying. A lot of the time it's just you rethinking, that way about how the feedback is coming across. So that's one example. And another, I think, like the overall example that the world deals with on a larger scale is just, classism. Classism is the ego at play for sure. Whenever it is you go around in the world and you think you're better than other people, that is definitely your ego at play. So I think, just think about the way that you relate with other people. And, as Christians, I think we really need to just focus on the fact that we are here to be of service to others. And I think if you let that be your focus, then you think and relate to people in a completely different way.
I think what's also important is the way you relate with yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why self-awareness is so important.
Yeah, that's why self-awareness is crucial.
Yeah, and don't be so self-righteous all the time, because I think that's also a problem. That's definitely the ego at play.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so that's just, our 2 cents, and just the way that we felt about pride and the ego, and how it really is. It's detrimental. It ruins relationships, and if you're not careful, then you really will be the person that finds yourself being like, well, everybody hates me, but it's like, no, just think about how it is you relate to other people, because that clearly has something to do with it. So can we all just be more conscious and more mindful in the way that we treat ourselves, yes, but also how it is we treat people. We will leave some resources in the show notes for teachings that have inspired this episode. And I listened to a lot of Robert Madu sermons, and he speaks a lot on this. One sermon in particular, I think it was titled "No Crown," was the inspiration for this episode. And I also listened to a lot of Jay Shetty podcasts, so I'll link those in the show notes for you to check out, and then you can just learn a bit more and hopefully be more conscious about the way it is that you move in this world. So that's it for this week. Thank you for tuning in, and join us again next week. Till then, follow us on Instagram at Christ Up Podcast, and share this episode with your friends, and make sure that you subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Remember that you are blessed so that you may be a blessing.
Christ Up all day, every day.